The massive crystal chamber of the convergence station buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 847 different alien species filled every available space. Some floated in bubbles of methane gas, others crawled across the walls with sticky tentacles, and a few existed only as shifting patterns of light. But all eyes, sensors, and awareness focused on the small section where 3 humans sat alone. Ambassador Kael'thon rose from his floating platform, his body made of living crystal that caught and bent the chamber's pale light. His voice boomed to the translation systems that turned his crystalline chimes into words every species could understand. "Friends of the Council," he began, "we gather today to decide the fate of the most dangerous species our galaxy has ever known." Jin-Woo Park sat perfectly still in his simple black uniform, watching the alien faces around him. Some looked angry, others afraid, but most just looked tired. Beside him, Hygiene Kim whispered quickly into her small communication device, sending updates back to Earth. On his other side, Captain Min Soo-han kept his hand near his sidearm, though they all knew weapons would be useless here. "The humans," Kael'thon continued, "have broken every rule we hold sacred. They reproduce too quickly. They expand too fast. They refuse to follow the laws that have kept peace in our galaxy for 10,000 years. A creature that looked like a giant jellyfish pulsed with angry red colors. They harbor the Veltar refugees," it said through a translator. "We declared those creatures too dangerous to live in civilized space, but the humans protect them anyway. Worse," added a being that seemed to be made of metal and wires, "they establish colonies in restricted sectors, areas we have marked as forbidden for good reasons. They ignore our warnings and build cities there anyway." Jin-Woo watched the crowd get more agitated. He had expected this day would come eventually. Humanity had been pushing boundaries ever since they joined the galactic community 50 years ago. They took in species other civilizations had rejected. They explored dangerous regions of space. They asked uncomfortable questions about why certain laws existed. "The final violation," Kael'thon declared, his crystal body flashing brighter, "is their corruption of stable civilizations. Everywhere humans go, they spread their chaos. Species that were content with their place in the galaxy suddenly want to expand, explore, question authority. The humans are a disease that threatens everything we have built." A massive creature that looked like a living mountain rumbled its agreement. "My people lived peacefully on their homeworld for 5,000 years. Then humans visited and filled their heads with ideas about space travel. Now half my population wants to leave and explore the galaxy. This is a human infection." Hygiene whispered urgently to Jin-Woo. "Earth Control says the evacuation is proceeding on schedule. Admiral Lee confirms all ships will be ready within 48 hours. Jin-Woo nodded slightly. The Council thought they were delivering an ultimatum, but humanity had been preparing for this moment for months. Hidden behind Saturn's rings, massive ships had been under construction. The Council's observers had reported them as simple mining operations, never suspecting their true purpose. "The evidence is clear," announced the Council Prime, a being so ancient and alien that it existed only as a voice from hidden speakers. "Humanity must be expelled from galactic civilization before their chaos destroys everything we have worked to preserve." The voting began. Each species showed their decision in their own way. Some flashed colored lights, others released chemical signals, and a few simply broadcast their thoughts directly. Jin-Woo counted carefully as the votes came in. 623 species voted to expel humanity. Only 224 voted to let them stay. "The decision is final," the Council Prime declared. "Humanity has 72 standard hours to withdraw all ships, colonies, and personnel to their home system of Sol. After that time, a complete blockade will be enforced. Any human found outside their system will be destroyed." The chamber erupted in alien celebrations. Some species sang in frequencies that hurt human ears. Others released clouds of glowing spores, and several simply flickered in and out of visible light with joy. Jin-Woo stood slowly and activated his personal communicator. Every species in the chamber could hear his transmission, which was exactly what he wanted. "Admiral Lee," he said clearly, "the Council has voted 623 to 224. They took the bait perfectly." He paused and looked directly at Kael'thon's glowing form. "Execute Protocol Starfall immediately. The alien celebrations began to fade as the meaning of his words sank in. Kael'thon's crystal body dimmed with confusion. "What is protocol, Starfall?" he demanded. Jinwoo smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. "You wanted us gone in 72 hours, Ambassador. We'll be gone in 48. But I think you're going to regret getting exactly what you asked for." As he walked toward the chamber exit with his fellow humans, Jinwoo could hear the worried whispers starting behind them. The council had made their decision, but they were about to learn that sometimes winning was more dangerous than losing. Admiral Soo-Jin Lee stood on the bridge of the massive ship New Horizon, watching through the huge windows as the greatest movement of people in human history began. All around her, screens showed thousands of ships lifting off from Earth, Mars, Venus, and every human colony in the solar system. But these were not the small evacuation ships the Council expected to see. "Captain Nam, report on the fleet status," she ordered. Captain Do-hyun Nam looked up from his control station, his face excited despite the serious situation. "Admiral, 37 billion people are boarding ships across all locations. The Luna City evacuation is 90% complete. Mars colonies are at 85%. The Jupiter mining stations are finishing their final loads now. But the most amazing sight was behind Saturn's rings. Huge ships the size of small moons were moving out from their hiding places. The Council had watched these construction projects for years, thinking they were simple mining operations. They had no idea that humans had been building the largest generation ships ever created. Soo-Jin smiled as she watched the giant vessels move slowly into formation. Each ship could carry millions of people and had everything needed to support human life for hundreds of years. But that was not the most incredible part of the plan. On Venus, Captain Min-ho Yoon was directing an operation that made the Council's monitoring station send confused reports back to their headquarters. Massive atmospheric processors were working at full power, but instead of making Venus more suitable for human life, they were stripping away the planet's thick atmosphere and loading it into giant storage containers. "If we are leaving," Min-ho had told the confused alien observers, "we are taking our investments with us." The same thing was happening on Mars. Huge machines were collecting the red dust that had been slowly turning into soil over decades of terraforming work. Water from polar ice caps was being loaded into specialized transport ships. Even the orbital stations around Jupiter were being carefully dismantled and packed away. "They are not just evacuating," reported a worried council observer to his superiors. "They are taking their entire civilization with them." But the most shocking discovery was still to come. Deep in the outer solar system, beyond Pluto where the Council rarely sent their monitoring ships, Commander Eun-ji Bae was coordinating operations that would have terrified the aliens if they had known about them. "Admiral Lee," she whispered into her encrypted communicator, "the deep ships are ready to move. But I have to tell you, these are not like anything we have ever built before." Soo-Jin knew exactly what Eun-ji meant. For decades, while the Council feared the region called the Void Between Stars, human scientists had been studying it. They had sent unmanned probes into the darkness, where alien civilizations reported that ships disappeared forever. But the probes had not disappeared. They had found something incredible. The void was not empty. It was full of energy and possibilities that the Council's science could not understand, and humans had learned how to use it. "The dimensional fold drives are working perfectly," Eun-ji continued. "The quantum resonance chambers are stable. The ships exist in normal space, but they are also connected to something else, something the Council thinks is impossible." Other reports were coming in from across the solar system. On Earth, the evacuation was moving faster than anyone had believed possible. Instead of panic, there was excitement. Humans had always been explorers, and this felt like the greatest adventure in their history. Young families carried their children onto ships with smiles on their faces. Old people who thought they would die on Earth were getting a chance to see the stars. Scientists and engineers were practically vibrating with enthusiasm about the new technologies they would get to test. "This is not an exile," Captain Nam observed as he watched a group of children press their faces against the windows to watch their home planet grow smaller. "This feels like a celebration." Soo-Jin nodded. The Council thought they were punishing humanity by forcing them to leave. They had no idea that humans had been preparing for this day not out of fear, but out of hope. The void between stars was not a place of death and madness like the aliens believed. It was a gateway to something wonderful. "Signal all ships," Sujin ordered. "Begin Phase 2 of the Exodus. It is time to show the Council what humanity really learned in the darkness they fear." Across the solar system, the massive fleet began to change formation. Ships that had seemed like simple transports suddenly showed their true nature. Energy patterns that hurt alien sensors began emanating from their hulls. The space around them started to ripple and bend in ways that made the Council's physics impossible. And then, one by one, the ships began to disappear. Not by flying away, but by stepping sideways into dimensions that the Council did not even know existed. Set course of the void, Sujin commanded as her own ship began to shimmer with otherworldly energy. "We are not running away from anything. We are finally going home to a place where we can become what we were always meant to be." The last human ship vanished from normal space 16 hours ahead of schedule, leaving the Council staring at empty sensors and wondering what they had just unleashed. The last human ship disappeared into the void between stars 56 hours before their deadline, leaving Military Commander Vox then staring at completely empty space. His battle fleet had followed the human exodus to the edge of the Forbidden Region, but now his ships refused to go any further. "Sir," his navigation officer reported, his 6 arms shaking as he worked the controls, "the quantum readings are wrong. Space itself feels hostile here. My instruments are screaming warnings that make no sense." Voxen studied the dark area where humanity's massive fleet had vanished. No sensors could penetrate the void. No communication signals came out. For thousands of years, every species in the galaxy had learned the same lesson. Ships that entered the void between stars never returned. "They have solved our problem for us," he told his crew. "The humans chose suicide over exile. Send word to the Council that the threat is eliminated." His science officer, a creature covered in sensitive tentacles, shuddered as she tried to scan the void's edge. "Commander, there are stories about this place. Ancient warnings passed down from civilizations that existed before the Council was formed. They say things live in there that drove entire species insane." "Just stories," Voxen replied, but even he felt uncomfortable looking at the dark space where stars seemed to bend and twist. "The humans are dead. We can return to normal patrol duties." For 3 days, silence came from the void. Council monitoring stations reported nothing. The region remained as dark and empty as it had been for millennia. Military officials began preparing reports about humanity's extinction. Then the impossible began to happen. Dr. Unesio Park was working the night shift at Monitoring Station Watchtower when her instruments detected the first strange readings. Energy patterns were pulsing from deep inside the void, but these were not like anything in the Council's scientific databases. "This cannot be right," she whispered, adjusting her scanners again and again. The patterns looked almost familiar, but wrong in a way that made her feel sick to her stomach. Ship configurations appeared on her sensors that should not exist. Vessels that seemed to be in multiple places at once. Energy signatures that bent space around them like reality was made of soft clay. And underneath it all, something that made her translation equipment spark and smoke. "Commander Voxen," she reported with a shaking voice, "I am detecting communication signals from inside the void. They are using human language frequencies, but they are changed somehow. The harmonic patterns are causing our translation officers to become physically ill when they try to process them." Voxen rushed to the monitoring station, bringing his best science team with him. What they found there challenged everything they thought they knew about the universe. "The signatures are definitely human," confirmed Chief Analyst Kelmore, his crystalline body flickering with confusion patterns. "But the quantum resonance is impossible. These ships exist in normal space and somewhere else at the same time." Then came the first sighting that changed everything. Captain Hyun-Woo Lee's ship Silent Dawn materialized at the edge of the Rigel system, not through normal space travel, not by coming out of hyperspace, but by simply being there when it had not been there a moment before. "Council forces," came a transmission from the human vessel. "This is Captain Lee. We are in compliance with your exile order. We are no longer part of galactic space. But the voice was wrong. It carried sounds that bypassed the translation systems and spoke directly to the minds of everyone who heard it. Several alien officers collapsed, clutching their heads and making disturbing noises. Commander Voxen immediately dispatched interceptor ships to investigate the human vessel. What happened next would be reported and re-reported across the galaxy, but no one could explain it. The interceptors moved to surround the Silent Dawn, weapons powered and ready. But when they tried to target the human ship, their sensors could not lock on. The vessel seemed to flicker in and out of existence, like a reflection on water that rippled when you tried to touch it. "Fire warning shots," ordered the interceptor squadron leader. The energy beams passed through the Silent Dawn as if it was made of light and shadow. The human ship did not dodge or use shields. It simply was not there when the weapons tried to hit it. Then, without any acceleration or movement that the alien sensors could detect, the Silent Dawn appeared exactly where Captain Lee wanted it to be, floating peacefully in the middle of the interceptor formation. "We mean no harm," came Lee's voice again, still carrying those impossible harmonics. "We are simply passing through on our way to somewhere better." The interceptor pilots reported the same terrifying truth to their commanders. The humans could not be touched, could not be harmed, and seemed to exist partially outside normal reality. More sightings began coming in from across the galaxy. Human ships appearing in impossible places, establishing settlements on worlds that should kill any known life form, and most disturbing of all, not seeking revenge against the council that had exiled them. What did they become in that cursed place? Vox then wondered aloud as report after report came in of humans who were no longer entirely human. Deep in the monitoring station, Dr. Park detected something that made her blood freeze. The energy patterns coming from the void were growing stronger, and they were calling to something else. Something massive that had been sleeping in the galactic core for millions of years. Whatever humanity had found in the darkness was just the beginning. Captain Wu Jin-ko walked across the surface of Thanatos 7, without any protection suit, breathing air that should have killed him instantly. The planet's crushing gravity was 3 times stronger than Earth's, and radiation levels that would cook any council species in minutes barely warmed his skin. Yet he moved easily, planting crops in soil that glowed with deadly energy. Base camp to orbiting stations. He spoke into his communicator, his voice carrying strange new harmonics that made alien listeners feel dizzy. "The agricultural pods are working perfectly. We should have our first harvest in 30 days. High above the impossible colony, Ambassador Kael'thon watched through his ship's sensors, his crystalline body flickering with patterns of deep confusion and fear. The readings made no sense. Genetic scans still showed human DNA, but with quantum entanglements that should not exist in any living creature. "They are not the same species that left us," he reported to the emergency council session. "Something fundamental has changed about their basic nature." More reports flooded into council headquarters every day, each one more disturbing than the last. Captain So-Young Lim had established farming operations on worlds with methane atmospheres, where her people worked without breathing equipment. Commander Dong-Hyun Choi was mining resources from inside the corona of a star, his ships somehow protected from temperatures that would vaporize any known material. But the most shocking discovery came from the Outer Rim territories. Species that the Council had declared extinct hundreds of years ago were reappearing. The Veltar, who had been wiped out by a plague, were now thriving in human settlements. The Crystal Singers of Altair Prime, who had died when their homeworld sun went nova, were somehow alive again and building new cities on worlds that existed in multiple dimensions. "How is this possible?" demanded Council Prime during an emergency session. "We have records of their complete extinction. We watched them die." Ambassador Kael'thon's form dimmed with worry as he presented his findings. "The humans are not just protecting survivors. They are bringing back species that no longer existed. They are changing the fundamental rules of life and death." When the Council finally managed to establish direct communication with the transformed humans, Admiral Su-Jin Lee appeared on their screens like a ghost made of light. Her image flickered between multiple versions of herself, sometimes appearing as 3 different people talking at the same time. "You wanted us gone," she said, her voice carrying frequencies that made the council chamber's walls vibrate in uncomfortable ways. We are gone. We exist in the spaces between your laws now. What you see is simply us passing through on our way to somewhere better. What did you become in the void? Kael'thon demanded, his crystal body pulsing with fearful colors. Su-Jin's smile was terrible in its kindness, like a parent explaining something simple to a child who could never understand. We became what we always were. You just could not see it before because you were looking at us through the lens of your limitations. Explain these impossibilities, ordered the Council Prime. How do you survive in environments that should kill you? How do you bring back extinct species? How do you exist in multiple dimensions? Wrong questions, Su-Jin replied, her multiple images moving independently. You should ask why you believe these things are impossible. Your science is based on fear of change. Ours is based on embracing it. The Council's carefully maintained order began cracking like ice in spring. Member species started sending secret messages to each other, questioning laws that seemed natural for thousands of years. If humans could ignore physics, why should anyone follow Council regulations about expansion limits? If extinct species could return to life, what did death even mean? The Zephyrian delegate's tentacles twisted with anxiety as he reported, 17 species have secretly sent diplomatic missions to human settlements. They want to know what humanity discovered. For I have formally requested to leave Council space and join the human expansion. This is chaos, Kael'thon declared. They are destroying everything we built. But the most terrifying news came from Dr. Teo Shin, who was monitoring deep space from humanity's new installations that somehow existed inside stellar cores. His report sent waves of panic through every council member. The ancient structures at the Galactic Center are responding. He transmitted through quantum channels that bypassed all known communication methods. Something massive has been sleeping there for millions of years. Our presence is causing it to wake up. Long-range sensors detected energy patterns at the galaxy's heart that matched the signatures of the transformed human ships. Structures larger than solar systems were beginning to pulse with life. Ancient warnings in dead languages began broadcasting from the galactic core, speaking of things that created and destroyed entire civilizations. Admiral Su-Jin Lee appeared before the Council one final time, her form now completely unstable, existing as patterns of light and possibility rather than solid matter. You thought we were the chaos you needed to contain, she said, her words resonating through dimensions the Council could not perceive. You were wrong. We were the only thing standing between you and what is really out there. She gestured toward the Galactic Center, where massive energy signatures pulse in rhythm with humanity's new quantum heartbeat. And now we are not standing in anyone's way anymore. Captain Jimin Yu's diplomatic vessel simply appeared inside the council chamber without warning, not breaking through their shields or walls, but existing in the same space without moving anything that was already there. The alien representatives screamed and scrambled for cover as reality rippled around the impossible ship. Do not be afraid, Jimin said as he stepped to what looked like empty air, emerging from his ship directly onto the chamber floor. His voice carried harmonics that made the translation system spark and smoke. We come with information you need to hear. Ambassador Kael'thon's crystalline form flickered with terror patterns as he watched the human walk casually through matter that should have been solid. This is impossible. You cannot exist in the same space as our station. Your understanding of space is limited. Jamin replied with the patience of someone explaining basic concepts to a child. We exist in many spaces now. This is just one of them. Commander Inacio stepped through another dimensional fold, appearing beside him in a shower of light that hurt alien eyes to look at. The Veltar extinction you blamed us for causing? They are alive and thriving in our settlements. The crystal singers you watched die when their sun exploded? They are building new cities on worlds that exist in 17 dimensions. Lies, declared the Council Prime, though his voice shook with uncertainty. We have proof of their extinction. We recorded their deaths. You recorded one version of their deaths, Ina explained, in one layer of reality. But existence has many layers. We simply moved them to safer ones. The chamber erupted in chaos as council members tried to process information that broke their understanding of life and death. Some species began broadcasting distress signals, others retreated into protective shells, and several simply stopped functioning entirely. The primitive species you deemed unfit for civilization, J-Min continued, ignoring the panic around him, are now colonizing stars you cannot reach. The quarantine worlds you declared too dangerous for life are blooming with gardens that exist in quantum superposition. Reports had been flooding into the Council for months. 23 species had formally requested asylum in human space. 12 had asked to join humanity's expansion into regions that Council science said were impossible to enter. Even some of the Council's founding members were secretly negotiating with the transformed humans. But the most disturbing news came from the galaxy's edge, where Dr. Teo Shin monitored instruments that existed partially outside normal space-time. His latest transmission sent waves of terror through every council member who heard it. The ancient structures at Galactic Center are fully active now, he reported through channels that bypassed every known form of communication. Something that has been waiting for millions of years is finally moving. It recognizes us as kindred spirits. Long-range sensors detected massive objects emerging from the galactic core, each one larger than entire solar systems. They move with purpose, following paths that led directly toward Council space. Ancient ruins on dead worlds began broadcasting messages in languages that have been extinct for eons, all saying the same thing. The children have returned. The awakening begins. Admiral Su Jinli materialized in the council chamber as a being of pure light and possibility, her form constantly shifting between states that should not coexist. Reality bent around her like water, making the chamber's walls seem thin and temporary. 50,000 years ago, she said, her voice speaking directly to the minds of every being present, your ancestors found ruins of civilization that transcended physical limitations. Instead of learning from them, you built laws to prevent anyone from achieving the same transcendence. Those ruins were dangerous, Kael'thon protested, his crystal body dimming with fear. They drove explorers insane. They corrupted everything they touched. They showed the truth about existence, Su Jin corrected. Your ancestors chose comfortable lives instead. But the universe is bigger than your fears. And older beings than you have been waiting for someone brave enough to see beyond the barriers you created. The energy signatures from the galactic core were getting stronger. Ancient machines that had slept for millions of years were coming online. Structures that existed in dimensions council science could not measure were preparing for something that would change everything. What do you want from us? The council prime asked, his voice barely a whisper. Nothing, Su Jin replied. We are beyond wanting things from you, but you have a choice to make. Learn to exist in a universe that is larger and stranger than you imagined, or remain trapped in the small box you built for yourselves while greater powers reshape reality around you. She gestured toward the Galactic Center, where massive forms were moving between stars like fish swimming through an ocean of light. The beings that created those ancient ruins are returning. They have been waiting for a species capable of bridging the gap between what is and what could be. They have been waiting for humanity. The council chamber fell silent except for the sound of alien hearts beating too fast and minds struggling to process impossible information. Your exile of humanity was the greatest gift you could have given the universe, Su Jin said as she began to fade back into dimensions beyond perception. You forced us to discover who we really are. And now the ancient powers that shaped this galaxy when your species were still learning to make fire are coming home. The last thing the council saw was her smile, kind and terrible, as she whispered, "Thank you for setting us free."